nostalgic technologies. Let's talk about it. Hello guys, for today's video I wanted to talk about the subject of nostalgic technologies. Now I'm not talking about tech which goes back to the 60s, 70s, 80s. I'm talking about tech which is far more recent, but it feels like a lifetime ago because of how far these things have developed over the last decade or so. The first item of tech that I wanted to go over is one that we are all very familiar with. We use it every day. You'd be hard pushed to find someone that hasn't got one, at least in some capacity. And that item of tech is the mobile phone. Now my phone is pretty much my lifeline. I mean, I do everything on it. But for one of my very first mobile phones that I had, that wasn't the case at all. I didn't use it in the same way. And that phone was the Nokia 3210, which I still think is one of the best phones I've ever had. And it was a mobile phone that for me, not that I realised it at the time, but as I say, for me, really showed the starting point for what we have now. So, for example, with the Nokia 3210, you could change the cover front and back, much in the way that you can put a case onto your iPhone or your Android or whatever you're using to personalise it more. But that was a big thing for me then. Phones I'd had a couple of phones before that which you didn't have that capability. So the idea of being able to customise it somewhat was pretty cool. And also with the phone, you could make your own ringtones. So you would, I guess it must have been like a setting within the phone, I can't remember, but you go in and each button would have a different tone. It'd be like do 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 do, or whatever. And then, if I remember rightly, in the back of some magazines, you'd have a section where it would show you the combination of buttons to make certain songs that were popular at the time. So it kind of was the most basic form of music you could have, but it was such a new thing that everyone loved it. Gaming on that phone became a big deal, and the biggest game on there, not that I can remember any other games on there, it was Snake. And Snake, me and my friends would spend many an hour on the train home from college, for example, or I don't know, waiting for a bus, or just hanging out at a friend's house, and you take it in turns on Snake, see who get the highest score. And it was a really, really fun game, basic as anything, because that was the capabilities at the time. It kind of set a standard of enjoyment for games going forward. And actually, when I think about it, there was a big period of time I didn't play games on my phone, because I was doing other things, and phones became very normal in your everyday life, but they weren't used for everything. The Nokia 3210, you wouldn't be able to go online with it, for example, to surf the internet. Do people still say surf the internet, surf the web? Do people say that? I don't say that. Apart from right now, I would never say that, but I just did, so that's fine. Showing my age, you see, it's all that nostalgia. You wouldn't take photos with it, you wouldn't video chat, for example. No, you couldn't do any of that. Which brings me on to another piece of nostalgic tech, which is disposable cameras. The old box camera, 25 photos maybe you could take on them. Had a little wheel that you'd wind on for the next photo. And I really miss those sort of cameras. And let me tell you why. So when you go out for a night out or an event, family barbecue, say, or a wedding, or just a night out with your friends, and you had a disposable camera with you, it was always because it was something important going on. And so when you take the photographs, you were limited to how many you could take, and you couldn't redo them. So the pictures that you would take would always be, a group shot, someone opening their birthday presents, you and a friend sort of hanging off each other on a night out, for example. And then the fun part would come, for me, was getting those photos developed. You'd often have to wait about a week for them. That process got quicker over time. But you'd wait about a week sometimes, and then you'd get your photos back. And first of all, you'd forget what you'd taken, and secondly, you'd have no idea how they turn out. So more often than not, in a block of 25 photos, you'd have, 4 that were blurry, like some weird smoke effects going over them, which you had no idea where that came from. You'd have people's heads cut off. You'd have people moving when they shouldn't have moved. And then you'd have your few, maybe 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 if you're lucky, which were good. People are in the shot, it's clear, no one's got that red eye thing going on, and they'd be the photos that would go into your photo album, for example. And it would actually be a bit of almost an event in itself, looking through the photos, which sounds mad now when you think about it, that we'd sit down and we'd hand the photos around for people to look at. But yeah, disposable cameras are great. I can't see them ever making much of a revival, but I might try and get hold of some of those actually. Okay, the next piece of tech I'd like to talk about is DVDs. Okay, now we all know what DVDs are. People do still buy them, but nowhere near in the amount that people did when they first became a big thing. I can remember having, entire sort of boxes and cupboards full of VHS tapes, and they took up so much space. But that's just how it was before DVDs came along. And then when DVDs were invented, I couldn't believe it. It was these, they were so thin, the cases, in comparison to the big bulky VHS boxes. You could fit so many more into the same space as you had your VHS tapes in. So very quickly, people would be swapping them out, and people would build their collection. You'd go to someone's house and you'd be like, "Wow, look at all the DVDs you've got," and you'd be really impressed with how many films they'd bought and how many they'd watched. It would almost be a badge of honour that you had so many DVDs, because it showed, I guess it showed how into films you were. Even if you weren't really, people would just buy them. But from memory, they weren't super cheap to start with, were they? Which would mean for myself at the time, because I was a teenager when they first came out, I would have to be really picky about what ones I bought. I'd get paid, and then I'd really carefully pick a DVD that I wanted to watch. And I would go home and I would lay on my bed and I'd put the DVD on and I'd watch the film, and then I'd watch the film with the director's commentary, for example, and then I'd watch all the extras. So basically I would watch every single thing on these DVDs because I found it really interesting. I loved hearing the actors and directors' comments and what the scenes they were doing. I loved watching the sort of maybe deleted scenes that they'd put on some of the DVDs. I loved all that. And then over time, as digital media became what we know it to be today, for me, DVDs are not a thing anymore. I haven't got any DVDs, and I wouldn't buy a DVD. The idea now of having a unit, stacked up with DVDs in it, isn't something I would want to have, which goes to show how quickly, I guess, the things we consider to be up-to-date and modern become obsolete. And the last thing I'd like to talk about is a little thing called Myspace. So I had Myspace not very long before I had Facebook, of which I have neither anymore. But for me, Myspace, when I think back to it, was a real eye-opener for what was possible online. The things I loved about that website was that you could, to a certain point, fully customize your homepage. Things like you could change the cursor of your mouse, add pictures, add links, basic moving images to give it a bit of life to your page. And so I love all that customization stuff. And I would spend way too long just changing stuff because I could. It was the first website I'd ever used where you would upload your photos to, where you'd chat to people, your friends, in the comments. And it was the first time alongside mobile phones where you would have that type of communication, like written down communication. And it was great. It was a really fun way to just keep in touch with people and, see what was going on in the world. Even with the internet at this point, the world was still a very vast place. Whereas now, the world is much smaller. Most people that watch my videos on YouTube, they're not people that I know. The people from you guys are normally from other countries, and that's fantastic. I love all that. It really shows how closer the world becomes because of technology, which is lovely, you know. Well, that's the end of another video, guys. If you've got any nostalgic tech memories you want to talk about, then please leave a comment below. But as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.